Okay, so hello everyone, good morning, good day, good evening, depending on where you are in the world joining us. My name is Jordan Howell. I'm Associate Professor of Sustainable Business at Rowan University, which is near Philadelphia in the USA. And I'm a member of the Sport Ecology Group, and in collaboration with the Rowan Center for Responsible Leadership, we are very excited to have this morning, or today, I guess, some excellent panelists who are going to inform us about the topic of biodiversity and golf. So I'll give some brief introductions of our panelists, and then we'll turn it over to them. Audience members, if you want to type questions into the chat area, that would be great, questions and comments, and then I can moderate them once our speakers have shared information with us towards the end of our talk. So we should go about an hour to an hour 15 minutes this morning. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be great. So today we have with us three speakers. First, we'll hear from Irene Petrosillo, who is Associate Professor of Ecology at the University of Salento. Irene earned her PhD in Basic Ecology in 2005 at the university and has gone on to a permanent position there in Lecce, Italy. Her research interests are mainly focused on landscape ecology, ecosystem services, land use, land cover change, and land degradation. She is also the associate editor of the Journal of Environmental Management, and since 2015 has been a member of the executive committee of the International Association for Landscape Ecology. So next we'll hear from Thu Nguyen, who is an environmental scientist at Vietnam National University of Forestry. Thu graduated from the Australian National University, majoring in environmental management and development before entering Murdoch University in Australia for a PhD program. Thu's research has examined the ecological roles of golf courses in urban landscapes. Her interests are biodiversity conservation, habitat restoration, and human well-being, and most recently, applications of remote sensing technology in assessing changes in urban environments and their linkage to human well-being and making cities more livable. Last, we'll be hearing from Kate Torgerson, who in 2013 founded the consulting firm Environmental Golf Solutions Australia. EGSA has as a mission to assist golf clubs to become leaders in sustainability. Kate has over 16 years of practical and academic experience in the golf course and conservation industries and has worked on several highly ranked Australian golf courses. Her career began with an apprenticeship in turf management, where she soon discovered a passion and need to assist and showcase the good that golf courses can provide to the environment and community. Kate's passion to educate has been showcased in several articles written for turfgrass management journals, as well as industry seminars and presentations. So with all of that, we'll turn it over to Irene first. And as I said, folks in the audience, please feel free to submit your questions in the chat area. So Irene, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I share the screen.
Yes, you should be able to. I see it. Looks good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizer and Jordan in particular for the invitation to this event. My speech is focused on the possible role of golf courses in supporting biodiversity and ecosystem services. So just let's start with the landscape ecology perspective. The question is if landscape is only a beautiful view. This is the most common way to look at the landscape. Therefore, these are landscapes because these are beautiful views. However, also these two pictures represent a landscape, industrial landscapes, that are less beautiful than the previous one. This means that the ecological perspective of the landscape cannot be based only on the view, but the landscape ecology perspective see a landscape as a mosaic of patches and corridors that represent structures, and also by the spatial arrangement that represent the spatial patterns of the landscape. The relation between landscape structure and patterns determine the spatial heterogeneity. That is the spatial and temporal complexity of landscape properties, which present two main components: the spatial composition, given by the number of patches in a map, or the proportion of each patch in a map. In other words, it represents the diversity of patch in a map representing a landscape. For instance, the amount of forest, or the amount of wetlands, or the length of forest edge, or the density of roads. The other aspect, the other component, is the spatial configuration, given by the juxtaposition of different patches. In other words, is the contagion among patches, which is a measure of patches aggregation in the space. If we have a look at this example, we have the spatial composition that is set in 50% of natural and 50% of human-dominated land cover, while the spatial configuration changes as the landscape fragmentation increases. This is a simple example of the way the landscape configuration can change as the fragmentation increases by keeping constant the landscape composition. So the landscape functionality with this spatial configuration is obviously different in comparison with the fragmented spatial pattern on the other side. The research efforts about the possible environmental implication of golf courses are still open, and as no other sport occupies and manages such a large areas of green space in the landscape. Even if the debate between who is focused on golf course significant adverse environmental, economic, and sociocultural consequences, and who consider them as a suitable measure for supporting biodiversity is still open. However, in order to underline the strength and weakness of golfing research in the landscape context, we have carried out a literature review aims at examining how the impact or benefits, the main landscape socio-environmental components, analyzing the knowledge network structure characterizing the international research that is focused on golf courses, listing and discussing the most common best management practices that can mitigate their environmental impacts, and finally, suggesting a new research perspective. The review has collected and organized 239 articles representing a large sample of the most relevant literature on this topic. The figure shows the temporal trend of the publication on golf course topic, highlighting that the environmental research interest in golf course is increasing significantly between 2000 and 2005. The most recent trend shows an oscillating trend around 10-15 articles. And this trend has been also confirmed by a recent systematic review that we have carried out on similar topics, and that is based on 374 articles. The research are mainly focused on study areas in US and in Europe. And in the first literature review, from each article, we have acquired the variable listed in this table, such as the list of authors, the years of publication, the golf course context, when the study area was recorded, the socio-environmental components affected by golf course, and so on. It was possible to highlight that the most part of golf courses are in urban and peri-urban context, and only the 17% is in natural context. And of course, this determines the results of the literature review. This table shows the socio-environmental benefits and impacts of golf courses resulted from the literature review. It is possible to notice that water is the environmental component mostly impacted by golf courses. And this is also both in water quantity terms, so in terms of water consumption, and also in terms of water quality. In the first case, because in some arid and some semi-arid areas, a huge amount of water is needed for golf course irrigation. In the second case, golf courses can contaminate superficial and groundwater due to the chemical inputs employed to maintain the green cover. The environmental component that mostly benefits from the presence of golf courses is biodiversity and ecosystem services. However, we have to take into account that the focus of the literature review were on golf courses in urban and peri-urban context. For what concerns biodiversity, the literature review has highlighted that birds are the most studied groups. About 34% of articles were focused on this group, followed by insects and earthworms, about 20% of articles, and amphibian, about 14%. In the case of ecosystem services, this is a topic that is receiving great attention in the social, economic, ecological research. They are the benefits people receive from nature, and the ecosystem conditions determines what type and the quantity of ecosystem services the ecosystem can provide, so that the poor management and degradation of ecosystem often leads to loss of capacity to deliver multiple ecosystem services. The ecosystem services has been classified by the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment as supporting, provisioning, regulating, and cultural, and are the basis for human well-being in terms of security, basic materials for good life, health, good social relations, and freedom of choice and actions. The results of the review revealed the two crucial aspects to be considered when the potential effects of golf course on biodiversity and ecosystem service conservation is investigated. First of all, the landscape context matters. If a golf course is built in urban or peri-urban areas, new green habitats take the place of urban landscapes with potential positive effects on biodiversity conservation, ecosystem service provision, as well as on the quality of life for people living nearby. This is an example, an area of Denver City, where it is possible to observe golf courses within the urban matrix, with several positive effects on the quality of life of people, the contact with nature, the quality of air, and so on. The second aspect is the typology of the habitat replaced by a golf course. If a golf course replaces an urban or peri-urban area, the presence of a new green land use, independent on the kind of green, could bring social, ecological advantages. While in a natural context, the kind of green really matters. In the picture, an example of a golf course near a natural protected area in southern Italy. Several are the negative effects on wetlands and on the landscapes due to the salt contamination caused by the intensive irrigation of the golf course in an area at risk of desertification and without superficial water. This is the results of the cohort network analysis, and are based, this analysis is based on the conceptual linkage among the keywords of the articles, parts of the literature review. The vertices represent high-frequency keywords, and their sites were proportional to the occurrence frequency. The line width of the linkages represent the strength of the connection between two different keywords. As you can see in the figure, the cohort network analysis has shown three conceptual clusters representing the main research issues related to golf courses in the time range considered. Chemical contamination linked with pesticides, water quality irrigation, bird conservation supported by golf course, and biodiversity ecosystem service conservation. While this is the another network analysis, the most recent network analysis we have carried out based on 374 articles, where it is evident that there are some topics more analyzed and other less. Like, for instance, the red cluster, more focused on nature conservation, the light blue cluster focused on sustainable management, and the green cluster dealing with water reuse and the use of irrigation. While there are other clusters that are focused on well-known topics related to golf course, for instance, pesticides, water quality, and turf grass. Choosing a location for a golf course is one of the most important decisions that can be made in landscape design and planning. The review has underlined how some locations, like drylands and natural areas, are unsuitable for the settlement of golf courses, even if in these areas very often golf tourism is seen as a possible development sector. Urban golf course, on the other side, can contribute to the citizens' quality of life. The construction of a golf course in urban and peri-urban context is preferable for two reasons. Because as large urban green spaces, they can represent a green infrastructure, and when strategically planned and when connected in a network of natural and semi-natural areas, they can support a wide range of ecosystem services. The analysis of the literature has allowed the collection of the best practices, management practices for some of the environmental components that interact most with golf courses. Among the different recommendations, there are the application of an effective environmental management system according to the international standard ISO 14001 or the European Eco-Management and Audit Scheme Directive, or the proposal of organic golf courses, the inclusion of golf courses into the cultural landscapes where this sport is part of a national culture, the reuse of wastewater for irrigation, or to avoid the application of fertilizer when heavy rain is expected, just in order to reduce the chemical contamination, and to manage the artificial water bodies together with the surrounding natural water bodies as a mosaic of habitats, like golf courses included in ecological networks. Among the future research perspective, it is possible to highlight the strong need to increase the number of studies focused on the effect of golf courses on the ecological processes behind the functioning of the landscape, taking into account both its composition, so the diversity of land covers, and the spatial configuration, so the spatial patterns of the land covers. Then the identification of possible herbaceous species useful to mitigate the impacts of golf courses on water use, mainly in areas characterized by low water availability, with the quantification of the potential benefits of urban golf courses in terms of citizen well-being, the identification of some landscape design and management strategies, such as the increasing of the proportion of native vegetation in the landscape composition, together with the density and complexity of vegetation in the landscape configuration in golf courses, in order to enhance the biodiversity conservation, take into account a landscape perspective. Finally, to make golf courses more sustainable, we have to take into account that golf courses should be part of the support areas for biodiversity ecosystem services conservation and part of green infrastructures policies. In Europe, we have two different strategies that take into account these two aspects, and the golf courses are part of both policies, so that there is a recognition that golf courses in some landscape context can play a crucial role in supporting biodiversity and ecosystem services, as well as they can a strong part of the green infrastructure when they are settled in urban and peri-urban context. Thank you for your attention.
Irene, thank you so much for that review and the hard research that went into preparing it. Very interesting, and I think it connects directly to what Thu is going to be talking about next, particularly the aspects of herbaceous species and things like that in a peri-urban context. So there's been some comments in the chat area. We'll return to all questions and comments after we've heard from all of our speakers. But in the meantime, please do share your thoughts so we can have our excellent conversation later on. So thanks again, Irene. Thu, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
You're still on mute, Thu, just so you know. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.
It seems like it's a little bit zoomed in. Maybe? Okay, I think that's it. Even better.
So good afternoon, everyone. And I'm Thu Nguyen. I have worked for Vietnam National University of Forestry for years, and I work as a vice director of the Biodiversity Center. And I have just completed my PhD at Murdoch University in Australia, and my PhD is focused on the ecological roles of Gold Coast in urban landscape. And my study was conducted in Perth, in Western Australia. First, like the Gold Coast, why the Gold Coast attracted me, because I find the Gold Coast ecosystem in Australia is quite different in the Asian countries, you know, because of the maybe of different landscape context. So the Gold Coast in Australia is quite complicated with the like natural pests still exist, combination with the lawn. Why some of the Gold Coast in Asian country, I think it's more lawn proportion rather than the big tree existing in the Gold Coast. And for my research, it started with the Gold Coast as the subject to environmental debate, like some claim about the irrigation and water shortage causing by Gold Coast, and the construction of the Gold Coast can alter the natural habitats, and the Gold Coast can cause some soil and water pollution. However, like my study also provides some different aspects of the Gold Coast about the ecological values. And I focus on the role of Gold Coast in maintenance of the vegetations, and previous study also provides information about Gold Coast as the habitats for wildlife, or they can provide the ecosystem services. So for my whole study, I try to answer 3 research questions. The first one is how do Gold Coast play the roles in maintenance of vegetation cover and connectivity during the long urbanization period? And the second question is how different are the vegetation characteristics and attributes within Gold Coast compared to other land use in urban landscape? And the third one is how to Gold Coast provide cooling effects in urban environment. So my research is like remote sense based study, and is conducted like it covers the whole landscape of Perth, nearly the whole urban area of Perth metropolitan. And I use different data sets from Landsat, measure for time series analysis, and the PlanetScope I measure for spatial comparison of vegetation within Gold Coast with other land use. And the last one, I use a multispectral airborne imagery for the analysis of the urban heat island that is associated with the Gold Coast and other green space in urban landscape. Besides the vegetation cover, my research also use the MSPA analysis for which is a tool allow me to analyze the fragmentation of vegetation existing in urban landscape. For my study area, and it is in post-metropolitan, but the area cover up to 34 Gold Coasts. I think it's quite lots of Gold Coasts existing in Perth area, and it's quite good for a landscape analysis of the Gold Coast in urban green space network. So first, I have some finding in terms of the vegetation change over 30 years of urbanization in Perth, and we can see that the vegetation loss occur in Perth during 30 years of urbanizations. And this is the map of the vegetation loss and vegetation gain. Together with the loss of vegetation, I mean the vegetation clearings during the urbanization process. It still exists like the vegetation regeneration and restoration in this area through the time. And this is the analysis of the habitat connectivity, or like the vegetation connectivity through the time. And we can see like the vegetation in Perth metropolitan is decreased in terms of the core area. And the gray area is the isolates. I mean, it's increased through the time because of vegetation fragmentation, like vegetation clearing for urban development. It caused a decrease in terms of the core area and increase the isolated vegetation patch that called the isolate through the time. And this is an example of the urbanization in this area during the periods from 1984 to 2020. And we still see here the existing of the vegetation clearing for residential area, but some Gold Coast existing here. It looks like the greenskeeper of the green area in the city during the urbanization periods, and this is one of the Gold Coast that existing through the time. The surrounding area is changed a lot, but the Gold Coast did very well the role as the vegetation maintenance through the time. In my research, like when comparing the vegetation cover with other land use, yes, of course, in this city, the conservation lands and the rural area and other type of land use here, I describe here. I can explain a little bit. This is like some undeveloped area, but it's planned for the future urban development. So the rural areas, the conservation land and still undeveloped area is like maintains a quite big proportion of vegetation cover. Gold Coast and green space also contribute to maintain the vegetation cover in this city. And the vegetation cover is very little in the residential, commercial, and industrial area of the city. About the fragmentation of vegetation, in this city, like the proportion of the core area habitats, the core habitats that exist mostly in the conservation land in natural reserves, and but the other land use, it like the vegetation within the other land use, most of them are the proportion of the high proportion of isolates, and however, like in this, like the proportion of ridge is distributed within the conservation land and also in the Gold Coast and the green space, other green space in urban landscape. So, I mean, in the urban landscape, the different type land use, it still have the vegetation cover existing within them, and they all contribute to the green space network in urban landscape. And Gold Coast also is one of the contributors to the green space network of the urban landscape. This is one of the example of the Gold Coast that in my study area. And here is the existing two Gold Coasts, the number 1 and the Gold Coast number 2. And here I want to show the location of the Gold Coast is very important in terms of the conservation importance. The Gold Coast number 1 is quite isolated, and there is no native vegetation existing within this Gold Coast. And the Gold Coast number 2, this Gold Coast is connected to other natural reserves like surrounding, and it's very important in terms of conservation. The native vegetation still existing in this Gold Coast and is connected to other natural habitats within the urban land area. Therefore, like the location of the Gold Coast is quite important. And I mean, the future strategy in terms of integrated Gold Coast into the conservation strategy should be like, the government should pay more attention to integrate the Gold Coast in their conservation strategy in urban landscape. And for the next, for the third question about how the Gold Coast can provide the cooling effects in urban environment, my analysis showing that Gold Coast is one of the land use that contribute to like have a strong capacity of cooling effects in urban environment. The land surface temperature within the Gold Coast is quite low. It's the second lowest after only the conservation land. And of course, other land use like the residential and main roads and the industrial, like they have very high land surface temperature. And here is one of the example of like the different factor can contribute to the capacity of Gold Coast in reducing the urban heat. And this is one of the Gold Coast examples, that is Joondalup Gold Coast in Perth City. And the figure A is the rural image of the Gold Coast, and the figure B is the like land use categories in this area. And the Gold Coast is in orange color. And the figure C is about the distribution of the vegetation strategy. And it is classified from turf vegetation at the 0 to 3 meter, from 3 to 10 meter, and the vegetation from 10 to 50 meter, and more than 50 meter vegetation height. Together with Zakai, also we have a different classes of vegetations of habitats, like the green one is core area, and then the red one is rich class, rich habitats like the corridor vegetation, and also a lot of gray vegetation is this like isolated vegetation patch. It's called as that. And together we can see from the figure D is the distribution of the land surface temperature, and we can see that in the area of the water resources or in the area of where the tall vegetation distributed, the land of the temperature is quite low. And in the whole landscape overall, the Gold Coast seem to play the role as the cooling islands. We can see the blue islands existing in the urban landscape. So my research shows like the strong capacity of the Gold Coast contribute to reduce the temperature in urban environment. And here is another like figure showing the factors that may impact the capacity of vegetation in reducing the heat island. That is the NDVI index, about the greenness index. The second factor is the distance from the to the water resources, and also the vegetation high classes also affects the capacity of the Gold Coast in reduce the land surface temperature. And the last one is the configuration of the vegetation cover. I mean the habitat types, habitat classes is also contribute. And the type habitat here, like the core area, the bridge, and the X, like the larger patch, it means the core area, and the corridor vegetation type is more stronger in term stronger capacity in reducing the heat in the urban area compared to like the small and isolated patch will have a lower capacity in urban heat reduction. And this is the one applied in the model of the factors that impact the vegetation, impacts the capacity of vegetation in mitigates the urban heat islands. And it's here like the vegetation is more 10 to 15 meter, and vegetation is at more than 15 meter is like important in reducing heat. And also the other factor showing here is the larger patch, like the larger patch is more stronger in reducing heat. Also, the factor like the distance to the water resources and the NDVI stats showing the vegetation condition, vegetation health. It's all contribute to the capacity of the vegetation in mitigates the urban heat island. This is the sum of my findings from my research, and I can go to some of the conclusions that the Gold Coast have a multifunctional aspect. Like the multifunctional aspect of green space in Gold Coast is like confirmed from my research. Besides the other like negative impacts of the Gold Coast to the environment, my research also confirms some beneficial aspect of the Gold Coast in urban landscape. Gold Coast is quite multifunctional in the urban landscape, contribute to maintenance of vegetation, the habitat connectivity within the Gold Coast, and also contribute to mitigate the urban heat to mitigate the urban heat. And so from this, I also recommended like the Gold Coast because of the ecological roles of Gold Coast in urban landscape. So we will have the opportunity for the future integration of the Gold Coast into urban biodiversity conservation and ecosystem services improvement in urban landscape. So, but my research has a limitation because this study was carried out at the landscape scale by using the remote sense data. My research haven't go to the detail of the investigation of the biodiversity level of species diversity or vegetation health or vegetation structure on vegetation composition within Gold Coast with other compared to other land use. This can provide the overall contribution of the Gold Coast in at the landscape scale. So my recommendation is the future like field-based research at fine scale should be conducted to provide more understanding of the Gold Coast in biodiversity conservation in urban landscape. Yes, and thank you for your listening to some of my key findings from my PhD in post-metropolitan.
Thank you. That was really interesting too. Thanks so much. We'll give you a Zoom clap here as we do in 2022. Very, very interesting stuff. I imagine that it connects pretty well to what Kate is going to talk about from a practitioner perspective, both of the talks so far. Kate, if you're ready, we'll turn it over to you and keep the interesting questions and comments coming in the chat area, folks. There's great road trip recommendations that are flowing in here. So, all right. So, Thu, I think we can stop that. Okay, Kate, you should be able to share your screen now.
Can you see that?
Yes, I see slides.
Excellent. We're all good to go then.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Well, firstly, thank you, Jordan, and the Sports Ecology Group for inviting me along to this presentation today. It's definitely one of my passions, the golf and the environment, and something I've been pursuing over the past, I suppose, nearly 20 years now, which is a bit scary. But yeah, as you alluded to earlier, I started my business back in 2013 when I was sort of fresh out of being an apprentice and just really saw how the golf courses could, I suppose, benefit the environment. And I suppose hearing a lot of negativity about golf courses being environmental polluters, I was really sort of interested to find out and dig a bit deeper and find out how I could change the mindset of, I suppose, the community and showcase what golf can do. So I wanted to show you this slide first off. These are a few areas that I've worked in, and I just wanted you to have a think as we go through the presentation at which areas might be planted and which areas are natural. I'll just leave that one with you and we can get back to that in a minute. But yeah, as I mentioned, sort of starting as a turf manager, I really know sort of the on-ground work with sort of greenkeeping and the importance that these, I suppose, out of play areas can provide. As I've sort of progressed through my career, I've really noticed that there's a need to convert a lot of these out of play areas into native areas, not only to increase biodiversity, but to also reduce labour costs, reduce water and reduce chemical as well, which is one of our big focuses. So to date, we've actually almost converted nearly 150 hectares of mowing surfaces into native areas. So as you can imagine, that's equivalent to 75 MCGs, which, trust me, there's 75 on that screen there. So it's quite a big area that we've achieved probably, I'm going to say probably the last sort of 12 years, really. That's re-vegetating and regenerating as well. So again, some of our services that we do offer, Anywhere from vegetation master plans to project managing. We really like to be a hands-on company where we'll help out with designing, we'll help out with sourcing plants. We particularly choose a lot of plants that are indigenous to the area. And then we also continue on our on-ground management and sort of help with the maintenance long-term for all the turf managers out there. One thing we've recently dived into, thanks to COVID, given that the golf courses were closed down in Melbourne, we really had to think about sort of an entire golf facility and their sustainability and what they can do to become a more sustainable, I suppose, sport. So we now sort of look at waste management, energy consumption, single plastics, all that kind of stuff, and how golf courses can reduce that and just increase their sustainability management. So back to those photos at the start. Obviously it's a bit hard on Zoom, but if anyone has sort of said that they were all natural, they're actually all planted. So all these areas we planted from scratch. They obviously have evolved over the years, but before they were looking like this, they were just complete dirt or just mown grass areas. So over time you've seen, I'll just play this for you. So yeah, as you can see, that to me and to hopefully everyone else, they look like they're sort of being carved out of the natural landscape. But realistically, yeah, they've all been planted and really established probably over I'd probably say a 12 to 18 month, maybe 2-year process. So it's sort of, it is a long process, but it's quite quick when you see the results at the end of this. Again, just a couple of before and after photos. So sort of the photo on the left that you can see, that's a process of 18 months. So that was, we went in and did site preparation. We again sourced plants, which ideally we do 12 months in advance. So the local community nurseries can collect seed or collect cuttings and contract grow for us. And then we'll go and assist the clubs in planting. And then hopefully, if it all goes well, we get a result like that. And then the photo on the right, that was actually even less time. That was probably around 8 months to, that was already an area that had been, I suppose, tried to convert into a native area, but just wasn't quite successful. So we helped out and really got that going, and we're able to turn it around within a 10-month period. So, and again, a lot of these areas are out of play. You may some think that a carry is in play, but from the photos, they do look quite thick, but you can actually walk into these areas. They're quite sparse, and you'll be able to find your ball and play a shot out of it. And that's one of our big aims when we sort of look at a golf course. We don't want to slow play. We don't want golfers to lose their balls. We want them to be able to enjoy their game and enjoy the nature that they're surrounded in. So I suppose we really call ourselves rewilders, which is sort of really unique these days. We don't really look at ourselves as landscape designers. We really are all about planting, so it looks as though the golf course was carved out of the natural settings. And I've been lucky enough to work alongside some top architects where we've completed projects which were complete golf reconstruction, as you can see in these photos. This whole site was completely stripped back, and then we actually grew and planted about 120,000 plants over a 2-year period. And if you go out there today, a lot of people I've spoken to have said it looks quite natural, and they can't believe that a lot of the areas have been planted and how well they're actually regenerating. We also work with a lot of clubs, not complete reconstruction, so clubs that are looking to either enhance their natural areas already or convert some of their mown out of play areas. So again, given a lot of staff shortages after COVID, we're finding by sort of converting these areas into native, it's saving a bit of time in rough mowing and also increasing that biodiversity and the aesthetics for the golf course. Again, one big thing we try to push is variety. A lot of the golf courses, I suppose, particularly in Australia, had a, I suppose, a 1980s, 1990s theme of just monoculture planting, which is what we have on the right, where it's just pretty much one or two species planted throughout the entire golf course, and that was it. So these days, with a lot of feedback from the projects we've got, they want colour, everyone wants colour. A lot of people don't realise the amount of colour that Indigenous vegetation can provide. So by showing these photos to a lot of our committee members and sort of when we do pitches to golf clubs, they can sort of see that they don't have to have that monoculture, they can have variety, which then also increases the biodiversity on site. It brings back all the pollinators, all the birds that we often hear were once there but have been disappearing from sites. And a lot of the courses that we've worked on for several years now have actually said they've been noticing a lot of fauna coming back onto the golf course, which is always good to hear. And talking about fauna, so I think for golf courses, this is probably quite an easy low-hanging fruit that you can tick off that's not going to affect any golf, particularly with nesting boxes, bat boxes, gliders, even bee hotels. There's quite a lot of courses nowadays making their own honey. There's a lot of, in Australia, there's a lot of native bees that are quite harmless that can set up little bee hotels around your course. And then obviously you've got the koalas in Australia, which have just been endangered. So I've been working with a few clubs up on the Gold Coast where they actually rescue, they're part of wildlife crew and they rescue koalas. And unfortunately these days, the only places they can release are back onto golf courses because they're generally the green spaces that are found closest to the koalas. So they've created a program where they'll go on site and plant appropriate koala habitat trees. So they sort of work alongside the clubs, alongside the members as well. So it's a bit of a community program, which it brings the golf members as well as community members. They plant out these areas and obviously see the rewards when they put back some injured koalas and they monitor them and see how they're progressing on site. So to hear those good stories come out of golf courses, to me, it really shows that, you know, we need to push that more. We need to, I suppose, sell the story more and showcase what golf can provide to biodiversity in the environment. Again, sort of, I mentioned communities. So this is a real big thing for myself. I've always wanted to showcase what golf can do. And as you can see in these photos, I host a lot of walks and talks, not only with you know, core staff, but with volunteers at the golf course and with volunteers within the community. So a few of these photos are with community golf clubs who are run by purely volunteers or one staff member, and they're quite open to really bringing the community, the wider community in, opening their golf course and showcasing what flora is around and fauna is around. So we've had some really good success of late with that and a lot of quite good publicity as well. And to actually just see the enthusiasm of non-golfers that have come along to these walks and realised what is in the golf course that, you know, they've never really walked around before. And even some of them have started playing golf now. So, you know, it's one way to get people involved. Not everyone, but even just if you're a golfer like me and a hack, just to have a nice walk around a course and see the lovely environment, I think it's better than nothing. So, and again, setting up volunteers. So we really like to get the golf members involved with a lot of our planting projects. So we find that the more involvement they get, the more ownership they take. You know, we had a few projects where you know, admittedly at the start, they may be a bit hesitant about planting all this stuff, losing golf balls, but as we progress through the projects, they've really taken it on as their own. You know, they're even educating their golf mates and really promoting the good that we've been doing within the club. So to hear sort of those kinds of stories come out now, and they're always an enthusiastic bunch. You know, you turn up on a rainy day and they'll all be out ready to get planting and to help out, do weeding, do whatever they can to help their course. So to utilise those volunteers is really fantastic for us, and again to sell that story to the members and wider community. Again, this is a small community club that we've been engaged to help regenerate. So Mallacoota Golf Club was, I suppose, destroyed by the bushfires in 2019. If you can see on this map, they're located right down in the corner of Victoria here, about a 7-hour drive from Melbourne, so they're very isolated. They are a volunteer-based club, so there's no actual paid greenkeepers. They're all they rock up at 8:30 in the morning with their cups of teas and get out there and start looking after their golf course. So after the fires, they really wanted and knew that they could make a change. So previously it was quite thick with Melaleuca, which helped fuel the fire. But now, since then, we've actually found quite a diverse array of Indigenous species. We're actually up to now 4 rare species that were found. We've now had the interest from the local council, interest from bird groups. We've actually helped bring the Friends group on course. So the Friends group are now assisting with identifying and educating the volunteers. So really for us, this Mallacoota program, it's about showcasing the golf course, but also having it as a big community piece of land. So not just for golf, you know, we're going to have a walking trail through it. Again, you can go and see, you know, kangaroos and koalas on course. So to be able to have that kind of fauna and rare flora as well, again, sort of showcasing that golf can be a real benefit in biodiversity, and you know, and also sort of saving a lot of these species. I know a few courses around the sandbelt of Melbourne in particular, they propagate some rare species and plant them around the course to really ensure their future. They work alongside a lot of the local nurseries, because often golf courses are the only places in sort of suburbia that can provide the nurseries with really good seed or cuttings to be able to propagate a lot of these plants. So it is a quite a valuable green space, I suppose you could say, that again, you know, to me should really be pushed, and I'm glad I'm sort of working in this space and be able to sort of push not only to the golf world but to the wider community. So again, sort of that connectivity. This is along the Yarra River in Melbourne. As you can see, there's 3 private golf courses and 2 public courses pretty much next door to each other. So at the moment, the main thing connecting them all is the Yarra River, and we're in talks at the moment with a few stakeholders to be able to create a green corridors program where the golf courses will participate in a revegetation program, as well as rehabilitating the Yarra River banks and the creeks that do flow through their courses. So, you know, I think this is just 5 golf courses there, but if I showed you an extended picture of this, there's actually 13 golf courses along the Yarra River, which, you know, is, I suppose, the most famous body of water running through Melbourne. So to be able to have golf courses alongside it and working with stakeholders to rehabilitate what they can. A lot of the courses, they're quite mindful of how valuable the Yarra River is. So they have buffer zones when they spray. All of them, or most of them that I know of, are planting Indigenous local species to increase sort of the habitat. A few of them have glider boxes because there's a glider population through there. So to be able to really have quite a large parcel of land, if you think each one of those golf courses may be 50 hectares in size, so that's quite an amount of size just in that pocket, which can be a real good connecting corridor for wildlife and also biodiversity in the city, because it is about 15 kilometres, maybe 10 kilometres from the CBD, so it is quite close, but quite a large green space that can really be utilised. And again, sort of, I've mentioned it a few times, speaking up for golf. I think that's one thing definitely in Australia. We've been quite quiet. I think a lot of clubs are doing really fantastic programs on course. A lot of them don't even know that they're doing it. You know, by sort of, again, the turf management journal articles, as well as presentations. Nowadays with the Zooms and podcasts, it's a real easy way to get our stories out there. You know, you'll see the right hand side there, we've got Stuart from Royal Melbourne on a local ABC TV show showcasing, you know, the rare orchids and rare flora that they have on site. So again, I think the more golf can really show what we can do, I think the more support we'll get, and hopefully sort of a lot of support from governing bodies, government agencies as well, to put a bit more funding into these clubs, particularly a lot of the little community clubs that may need a bit of assistance to get started. But once they get started, their volunteers really take it on board and run with it. So yeah, hopefully we can see that in the future and really showcase what we can do. And that's it for me tonight. So hopefully I've shown you a lot of pretty pictures, because it was really hard to choose which ones I would use tonight. But yeah, that's one thing I really do love, is getting out there on course also and taking photos of all the wildflowers, all the animals and little orchids around. So I hope you all enjoyed tonight. And again, thank you, Jordan, for inviting me, and thanks.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Kate. You know, applause for Kate. Wow. Well, this is, I was telling a colleague that this is my favorite academic event that I've ever participated in my career so far. So thank you all panelists and guests. We have some questions and comments. You know, if you have others that you think of, please post them. Dan, we'll start with this most recent one, because it seems, you know, to cut across a lot of the research talks and topics that we've heard. How do you see courses and golf more generally handling the threats of climate change? Are there things from your research that speak directly to adapting to climate change? Kate, do you come across courses thinking specifically about climate change impacts in working with you? What do we think about climate change?
Yeah, again, this is a good question, because it's a debate we have at the moment at Malapita Golf Club, where, as I mentioned, they had pretty much wall-to-wall thick Melaleuca scrub, which just fueled the fires that came through. So for us, we're really mindful of that with regeneration, and the different species that are appearing. We're trying to really promote them more than the Melaleuca, just to have that lower fuel. If it ever does come to a fire again, then hopefully the sort of more lower species will sort of slow it down, I suppose, instead of speed it up like the Melaleuca did. So that's definitely, yeah, it's on the mind of a lot of golf clubs.
Irene
or Thu, anything especially salient about adapting?
If I can say something,
yeah.
I think that the golf courses can play an important role in mitigating climate change, and also in the adaptation strategies. I think that, for instance, in Europe, we have this infrastructure strategy for 2030, where the golf courses have been included, because with a sort of rewilding, as Catherine says, rewilding policy, we can use the golf courses as a real green areas that can help the natural protected areas in maintaining the different ecosystem services that they can provide. And among the different ecosystem services, we have something related to climate change, to mitigate climate change. So I think that golf courses, if managed in a different way, can play a crucial role in mitigating climate change.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. If they have all these other buffer attributes or kind of, you know, positive stormwater, green infrastructure attributes, then they could play a role in climate change. Thu, did you come across anything specific to climate change in your work, or kind of fitting with the other comments so far?
I'm really impressed with the work that the case group have been done with the biodiversity in Gold Coast. And I think, of course, like for the climate change, is one of the examples from my research is like the capacity of Gold Coast in reducing, in mitigating the temperature within the urban landscape. But I also have some concern, like because the as presented by Kate, they have some program like planting the native vegetations within the Gold Coast and increase the biodiversity. My wondering is about like some Gold Coast is private and some is public. So how the conservation activity can integrate it with the Gold Coast management or Gold Coast manager, how like how we can have an agreement between the, for example, the government program of biodiversity corridor or biodiversity conservation with the private Gold Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a lot difficult with the private clubs compared to public. A lot of the public courses, for example, the Wood End project that we're working on, that's really been a joint effort with the local land care group. So it was quite easy to get, you know, the local neighbouring conservation experts involved in that project. With private, it's a little bit difficult, but we're still seeing a few clubs now, particularly I just visited one up in Sydney where they've actually had a bushland or bush care group looking after their endangered vegetation communities for probably 10 to 15 years now. So yeah, it is happening, but it would be great to see it happening more and having that sort of collaboration and partnership with, I suppose, the land care and biodiversity conservation people.
As we get close to the end of our session, I'm wondering if each of our panelists, can you leave us with one kind of take-home thought, one concluding thought about what golf courses can or should or must do with regard to biodiversity and promoting ecosystem services and conservation issues? Some place that we could all encourage our own clubs to start at, something like that.
I can go first.
Okay.
I think the first port of call I would be saying is go to your local plant nursery. A lot of councils have native nurseries. If not, there's always little community nurseries who again are run by volunteers, and they're so passionate about native vegetation that they will sit down for hours and be able to tell you what species will be suited to your golf course, give you ideas on how to start. So I'd be really sort of reaching out to them. A lot of local councils again have brochures on what to plant in your area, but I would just say don't hesitate in starting. Even if you start small, you're starting your journey, and that's all we need. We just need everyone to start that journey, and hopefully it will explode and increase from there.
Okay, so just get the ball rolling. All right, that seems like a key point. Irene and Thu, what do we leave our session with this morning?
Yes, given the color of golf course that is green, I should say let's make the golf course green. So also in their management that is sustainable. So there are a lot of tools now to make the management of golf courses sustainable. So let's use them.
All right, so we're already green in color, green in sensibility and practice as well. Love it. I love it. Thu, final thought. What can we do? What should we tell our courses to do?
I think like for the golf course, I think the first step is like the regulations on construction and maintenance management of the golf course. And I think the activity like the research group of CASE is doing is quite impressive. And because of the golf course is quite connected with the important conservation area. So for me, it should involve in the conservation strategy from the government to make it more action should be taken, because the golf course, it seems to sometimes is forgotten in the conservation strategy because it's one considered as a kind of commercial land use.
All right. Wow. I am so appreciative to the three of you for joining us across time zones around the planet. I think this was really beneficial, and looks like there's lots of new friends that we've made and connections. I will definitely be in touch with each of the three of you about some future research and projects. And thank you so much for helping Sport Ecology Group and Rowan Center for Responsible Leadership with this excellent event. We'll give you one more round of applause, and everyone who attended as well. Thank you so much. And we'll be posting our recording of this hopefully very soon.